So elasticity means, suppose you have your resources, right, and your demand is increasing, you are able to move your resource capacity according to the demand. So you don't need to dimension your resources. If somebody is from data center background, they would know we had to dimension our requirements in terms of our compute capabilities, our disk requirements, and networking requirements before we were planning to, deploy any type of services on our data center. Similarly, in cloud, we don't need to guess what is the requirement in terms of resource. We just need to, start with an initial value, and then we can scale, or we can have elasticity implemented. So think of elastic as an object which just regains its shape upon release. And there's another concept called plastic, which once is bent or deformed, it retains that shape. It doesn't come to back to its original shape. So elastic is anything which comes back to its own shape. So similarly, in case the demand is low, the elastic resource will come back to a normal value. So what is Elastic Compute Cloud? Basically, it's a virtual machine, a VM. But basically, with this, you get a virtual computer on cloud where you will have some certain compute, certain memory. You will have a networking component to it. Then there would be storage. So think of it as CPU, this as RAM, this is your network driver, and storage as your disk. There are over 500 instance types, so it's not possible for anyone to remember any type of instance type. So I'm going to explain what are those instance types. So this is a quick on virtualization. Virtualization is an abstraction of computer resources. Basically, you just need to use some sort of compute. It doesn't matter what type of physical server you are running, but you will get some sort of compute. It is possible because of the advancement in the processing technology. We have multi-core processors. We'll have a hypervisor, which essentially is a software which enables a virtualization. And then we can deploy our virtual machine. So the advantage of virtual machine is it has increased utilization. There's isolation between applications, and then it's easy to scale and provide some sort of redundancy. So now if you talk about physical resource, for example, we have a server which has 16 CPUs, 128 GB of memory, and 100 TB of disk. With this virtualization, we can have one virtual machine with 4 vCPUs. Now vCPUs is the virtual CPUs. And then we can divide that 128 GB of memory depending upon our requirement. Now what we can do, suppose our virtual machine is going out of the resource, we can shut it down and increase this 4 vCPUs to 8, this to 64, and this maybe 50, until unless we reach this limit, right? If we reach this limit, we can move this virtual machine to a different server as well. So that this is the advantage of a virtual machine. So what is the virtualization workflow? We take an ISO image. For example, you can take an Ubuntu image or Red Hat image or anything. You install it. So suppose you do it on a virtual machine provider, for example, VirtualBox. So what you can do, you can just create a virtual machine and define vCPUs, memory, and disk. For example, I selected 4 vCPUs, 32 gig of memory, and some disk. And I can install that operating system on that virtual machine and I can use it. So general step is install hypervisor, create a virtual machine, and install the guest operating system. So keep in mind the operating system which is on top of the virtual machine is called guest operating system, and then start using the virtual machine. On EC2, what happens that this image is called AMI or Amazon Machine Image. The image which we used in virtualization, that was called an ISO image or whatever image that you are using, whichever format it is. In EC2, this is called an Amazon Machine Image. All this part is abstracted. So we don't know about the physical resource. We don't know about the hypervisor. It's abstracted to us. So what we can do, we can just define the resource, CPUs, memories, and disk. And this, they have created a collection of various types, which is called instance type. So we select an instance type. So they have a combination. For example, you want 2 vCPUs, 8 gig of memory, and this much of disk. The instance type is, for example, T3A, whatever it can be. Then we launch an EC2 instance, and then we have the operating system on top of it. So the general workflow is select the instance type, select the AMI, launch the instance, and use the instance. So here we don't have to care about the, you can say, hypervisor. So what are the components of an EC2 instance? I think I've explained this in the demo part. What are the prerequisites for the EC2 instance? But think of it, in EC2 instance, we need a key pair, this key pair, which we need on our system. This is for SSH access, right? If you want to log into that EC2 instance, right? Then we'll have some network connectivity. because we want to access that instance, we need that AMI. AMI is the image. We need the EBS volume. So EBS volume, there are two types of volume. One is root, which is inside the instance, and then we can attach another volume. So this is ephemeral. Ephemeral means as soon as we terminate the instance, that root volume would be deleted. EBS volume is if we want to have a backup, right? So we can have a kind of external disk. So we can store all data on that EBS volume, and then we can use it with other instance later on after we terminate the instance as well. So these are some of the components: AMI, key pair, network, security group, and EBS volume.